This is Retirement Roadmap Radio with Mark Fricks of Master Plan Retirement Consultants. Listen in as we address your retirement concerns and provide insight to help put you on the path to achieving your retirement goals. And now, Retirement Roadmap Radio.
Hey folks, welcome back to Master Plan Retirement's Retirement Roadmap. My name is Evan, and with me as always, retirement planner Mark Fricks. Today's topic can be a difficult one to discuss with a client, not so much because of the complexities, but more so due to its sensitive nature, and that is the passing of a spouse. The immediate aftermath of the passing of a spouse requires so much of a person. It can be emotionally draining, hopefully not financially draining. However, that can be a case as well. The people that I know who have had to plan a funeral for a loved one have been completely exhausted by the end of the experience and often don't find the time to slow down and even grieve until long after affairs are settled. Today we'll be reviewing what we call a survivor's checklist of what needs to be handled immediately following a death and the things to consider as time passes. Mark, I would dare say one of the most important things that we can do for a client is assisting in the many transitions that happen once a loved one is lost.
Yeah, Evan, it really begins at the very beginning of working with a client. I'll go ahead and anticipate that there's a pretty good chance that somebody's going to pass away first. And it could be a significant amount of time before then. And so we go ahead and from a financial standpoint, begin lining things up. I'll never forget, we'd only been in business a couple of years, and it was our first passing away of a spouse. And she called me up. She said, Mark, I'm making up names now, Matt passed away last night, and she said, I don't know what to do. And I said, we have a plan. I said, you go grieve, you go plan the funeral. Here are some things that will help you do that. But more importantly, don't worry about financially, because we've already got an alternative plan to take care of that. And I think that's huge. I really think that's big. And so even when a prospect comes in, one of the reports we run, as you know, is if somebody passes away earlier, what happens to the income? What happens to the assets? Is there another plan? Is there life insurance needed? Is there, whatever? And so it kind of guides us into the planning process so that, again, they don't have to worry so much about finances and can concentrate more on the grieving process, the emotional process. We had somebody come in this week. Her husband's now been passed away for 2 years. She said, I'm just now beginning to get my feet under me. And it's been 2 years. And so that's the emotional part. And so I'm glad we're talking about this. We have a great checklist that can help guide us as we help our clients through the process. Again, a lot of this is things to do, not how to grieve. This is not a grieving session or anything like that. But if this can be taken care of, it takes a lot of the load off so that the grieving and the emotional part can be handled separately.
Right. Yeah, and we have a couple of checklists. I'm going to run through one. It's about a dozen points. And again, it doesn't really get much on the financial side. We will discuss that a little bit, but it's more of a step-by-step guide. We have another one called the Survivor's Checklist here, and it's about 60 points. And it's very thorough. Won't apply to everybody, but it really gives you something to look at. And when everything else is just a whirlwind in your mind, you have something concrete that you can check off and follow through. Do I need to handle this, this, and this? So jumping right in, the first thing we'll discuss is obviously work with the funeral home on the obituary services and specific arrangements. And I dare say that's going to be the first week of just, it's going to feel crazy,
It is, and we encourage our clients to go ahead and maybe do some of the pre-planning. Go ahead and visit the funeral home or and decide on cremation, decide on whatever you want, so that, if something happens, whether it be to both of you or one of you, somebody steps in and says, hey, Mom wrote this down. This is what she wants. Call this funeral home. This is the kind of service she wants. That type of thing. I know I don't want this to sound morbid or anything like that. This is real life. So it needs to be talked about. And so go ahead and pre-plan. I've had several clients come in and say, we took care of that, last month. We feel good about it. We don't want to burden our kids. We don't want to burden each other. And so at least we've got, the funeral home picked out, the grave site or the vase or whatever it is you want to use. And all that's planned. And now really the kids or the spouse can just step in and kind of push a couple of buttons and take care of that.
Yeah. And a lot of our clients, when they go through the estate planning and legacy planning, specifically when they're discussing with our attorneys or our attorney associates, they discuss some of those things, how they want to be buried or whether it's...
and even put it in some of the documents. There's a couple of documents you don't have to, but again, or maybe put a letter, with your will and trust and things saying, this is, what I want, how I want it to look, things like that. I've even had people put letters in there kind of just saying what's been important in their life and what family's meant to them, kind of carrying on that that family tradition and just, kind of sharing from the heart, from beyond the grave. Again, I don't want to sound morbid, but really, hearing from somebody like that, and I've even seen videos before, of them kind of saying, hey, if you're seeing this, I've passed away, and just kind of going on saying how much I love you and you and you and what you've met, and I remember this story here. And I mean, it's just really neat stuff. That can really help people through the grieving process. And if somebody that does that is really unselfish, taking that time to do that.
Sure. Point 2, notify the deceased employer if that's applicable. Request any info on unpaid vacation, unpaid salary, sick leave, HSA balance if you need that, unpaid bonuses, deferred compensation plans, life insurance benefits, stock options. So not only if they are employed, but if they're no longer employed or retired, maybe if they're receiving benefits from their previous company.
Yeah, like a pension or something like that. If they still got a 401k at an old company. And you're probably going to say this next, but Social Security. If you're on Social Security or something like that, notify them as soon as possible to make sure that those checks stop. You don't end up having to pay money back to them.
And then also if there are any bereavement benefits for yourself, the survivor, with your employer, sometimes they offer those as well.
Yep, that's right. Yep. Don't forget what benefits you may have. Hey, we'll give you this much time off, or we'll give you, whatever. Or maybe your spouse had life insurance with your company. And so you need to check on that as well.
Yeah. Obtain at least 12 dozen copies of the death certificate.
Yeah, you may not need that many, but a lot of companies won't take a copy.
Right.
And sometimes they take a while to get, so you want to go ahead and make sure you got enough. They're not that expensive. I think maybe $10 a piece, something like that. So don't be afraid to go ahead and get what you need and not have to go back and get that again as well. So,
and what are some reasons they would need to present a death certificate?
Anytime somebody's going to pay on any kind of a benefit, whether it be life insurance, whether it be a survivor on a pension, whether it be an IRA that has a beneficiary on it, anything like that you'll need. And then, of course, and I would, I'm not a probate attorney, but I would assume that the courts would need something as well, to show that this has happened. So that's something else you need as well.
Then obviously notify your financial advisor, your CPA, attorney, and executor of your will. You want to start getting everyone on board and understanding what's going on and the situation you find yourself in.
Right. And again, hopefully you've had some of these discussions with these folks beforehand. A lot of times we'll bring in, if it's children or nephews or nieces or brothers or sisters, if they're trustees or executors, they'll go ahead and bring them in and kind of have a family legacy meeting and just say, hey, this is Mark, this is Evan, this is Master Plan, this is what they do, and they know where our stuff is. If you don't work with us, do the same thing with whoever you work with, and go ahead and introduce them to the team. I think you put that well, the team, and to make sure they work well together and things of that nature. And I guess, and it's kind of, it depends on the size of the estate as to whether to get an attorney involved. I mean, if you need to get a probate attorney involved, especially if you don't have a trust, a lot of stuff may have to go through probate. That's another whole decision-making process. It depends on how complicated it is. And also what state you're in. There are some states that require an attorney to be involved, others not so much. And again, that may be coming up on the checklist here, but a lot of moving pieces, and that's why we have these guides. Actually, I think, Evan, these are on the website. If I remember correctly.
If they're not, they will be. Okay. They should be.
All right. So if not, request one. They're great. Hopefully you won't need one anytime soon, but they are a great guide.
And use this, speaking of estate planning and legacy planning, attorneys, everything else, if you don't have that in place, use this as the moment to remind you, hey, we need to do this. And not just any attorney. You can go to almost any attorney and they'll draft a trust or a will for you if you request it, but you want to go to an estate planning specific attorney.
Yeah, if you have any kind of assets or an estate that's, I'd say probably anything worth over $500,000, you need to at least discuss having a trust. If you have land or property in more than one state, definitely, because probate has to be done in every state where you own something. So there's different reasons. This is not a legacy planning show, but step 0 before step 1 is make sure you have a will, at least, as Evan said, financial power of attorney, healthcare directive. If you die without a will, the court decides where your stuff goes. If there's any minor children involved, the court will assign a guardian to them. This is not automatic stuff. They don't just automatically give everything to the spouse or the kids. A judge is involved and a representative, and it can be spread out through many members of the family. So don't do that. I mean, a simple will can be very inexpensive. Yeah. Do people like to think about it? Maybe not all the time, but hey, we're grown-ups. It needs to be taken care of.
Yeah. Contact the DMV, Department of Motor Vehicles, to cancel your spouse's license. A lot of times now you can do that online. Hopefully you don't have to go to the DMV to do it, but sometimes you have to go there in person.
And get them off your car insurance too at the same time.
Yep.
Make sure they're off of that.
Then Mark mentioned this a little previously. Contact Social Security and Medicare about benefits, and your advisor may be able to help you with that as well.
Yeah, and SSA.gov is probably a great place to go as well. That's where Medicare and, of course, Social Security benefits are. You might be able to do that online. They're wanting you to do more and more online. So, and if you've turned on Social Security, you have a login, unless it was done 30 years ago. But you probably have a login. Go in, and it will have a section, passing away of a Social Security recipient or something like that. The Medicare, you don't want to be paying $165 a month for Part B Medicare if the person's passed away, for 3 months and things like that. So a lot of little details again, and I guess, Evan, here's a good little place to say this. This doesn't all have to be done in the first 2 days. Right. I mean, this is a checklist, and our more extensive checklist actually breaks it down into what do you do the first week? What do you do the first month? What do you do the first 60 days? And so you can kind of say, I'm going to spread this out a little bit and not think I've got to do all of this on Tuesday and Thursday after the funeral or whatever.
Right. I do want to take one moment to remind you guys to check out our website, masterplanretire.com. There you can find retirement resources, including these checklists, as well as a link to our calendar where you can schedule your complimentary consultation with Mark. That's 30 minutes to an hour where you get to discuss your retirement goals, dreams, hopes, and fears with Mark, and get some discussion time, and then some reports ran for you as well based on that conversation. So again, feel free to take us up on that, masterplanretire.com. You could also call our office at 770-980-9262. The next point I want to make is just documentation, and basically this is an organization moment, and we actually provide the service for our clients when they finish the planning stage of their time with us. We provide them with just a big leather-bound binder, basically with all of their information, house deeds, insurance, accounts, beneficiaries, you name it, right? So.
Yep. It's all in one book, one place to go. We call it the Professional Record Organizer. I'm sure that's trademarked.
Yeah.
But it is a big book, and it's got everything that somebody needs to know about you. So you just tell the kids, hey, if something happens to us, go to the log box or whatever, grab the book and everything in there that you need, whether it be who our insurance agent is, what's my driver's license number. I mean, anything you might need. It's very helpful, and anybody that works with us as a graduation from going from the planning stage to the ongoing monitor and review stage. That's kind of our graduation gift into phase 2. But our clients love it, and I've been using it for I'd say 25 years now. So it's and I've people utilize it, and it's a really good resource.
So ideally, you would have this organized before you would really need it. However, when you're trying to sort out accounts, what did my spouse have again? What didn't he have a 401k we never did anything with? Who was that with? I don't remember. This all in one place. So I'm going to read through this real quick, just a few points to consider, but there are certainly more. But things like wills and trusts would put in there, business ownerships, contracts, succession plans, things like that, birth certificates, marriage license, Social Security benefit statements, life insurance policies, employee benefits, things like that, any annuity contracts, investment accounts, bank accounts, things like that. Again, 401k account numbers, balances, passwords. They say now you're not really supposed to write passwords down, but I don't know if a password's safe anywhere these days, to be honest.
Well, actually now new language in wills and trust give permission for the passwords to be released to the executor. So it's the electronic paragraph is now what we call it. And if your will's a little bit old, it won't be in there, so you might need to have that updated.
Yeah. Credit card numbers, account numbers, loan account numbers, mortgage account numbers, deeds, titles of ownership, health insurance. I mean, you get the picture. Anything that you can provide, because what you don't want to find yourself in is a situation where you're trying to not only find accounts that you can't remember if they exist, but then also having to find all this other stuff that you need in order to even access or to get that money into your name.
Yeah, and a quick story if we have time. So, it's been years ago, but we had a client that his mom passed away, and we were trying to help with all that. But basically, she worked for Coke, which is here in downtown Atlanta. And the workers noticed that about once a month, she'd say, I'm going to my bank to swap out jewelry. She enjoyed wearing decent jewelry, and so she'd come back, and she'd have on some different jewelry, and get it out of her safety deposit box, and they knew that she was gone about an hour. And so he has, to this day, as far as I know, never found that safety deposit box. Because how many banks are in downtown Atlanta, and he would go within 30 minutes one way. Well, maybe she stopped and got a sandwich, so maybe it was 50 minutes away or whatever. Never found it as far as I know. Wow. And now that banks are changing names and being bought and sold, it's probably forever gone.
Wow, include that in your binder.
Exactly.
Man, so next step, credit reports from places like TransUnion, Equifax, and Experian.
Yeah, just again, you want to make sure that they're aware of what's going on, that nobody steals the information. How many people have stolen information of people that have passed away?
Yeah.
Put a freeze on their credit, things of that nature, and maybe a final look at their credit report to make sure there's nothing weird going on.
Yeah. So the next steps, there are many. Those were kind of preliminary look at the things that you'll have to do immediately, or at least within the first few weeks. But as Mark mentioned, accessing safety deposit boxes, if you know where those are, retrieve any contents, review inventory there. If your spouse was a beneficiary or an executor or had a power of attorney, update those documents now that they're no longer living. And that goes for your entire estate plan and legacy plan. Of course, all POAs and any power of attorney at that point is going to be null and void with the death that they were included on. So those will need to be updated, as well as beneficiaries on any of your accounts that you have that your spouse was a beneficiary of. Now you'd want to update that as well. Let's see. Review your current insurance again. That's something. What does your insurance need now? Do you want to change any beneficiaries on your plan? Are you the beneficiary of any insurance policies that your spouse may have had that you've not sought out to collect on? That's a huge one. Let's see.
Let me throw one out here
Please.
that's it's kind of not, I don't think it's part of the checklist, but it's something we've learned over the last couple of years. Anytime somebody passes away, if their name's on a bank account, they're going to freeze that bank account. And so we've had a couple of instances where the couple had nothing but joint accounts, and the funeral home wants a check, and they can't access any cash.
Yeah.
And so maybe they go to their church and borrow money or whatever. But I had one couple, he passed away and was at home. He was relatively healthy, he had a massive heart attack, and they had to do an autopsy 4 months before they could get a death certificate. So she could not access any of his money. She couldn't be a beneficiary. She couldn't get into the checking account for 4 months. This is something people don't think about, but it might be worth having. If you have a joint account, that's great, but maybe in 2 individual accounts as well, with a little bit of money saved in those if that were to happen, and God forbid. If you're 35 or 40, probably not as critical, but as you get older, important to be able to access, because funeral homes, they typically want to be paid in full, and they no longer will accept assignments of life insurance policies. Used to, you could say, okay, we'll just change the beneficiary to you as the funeral home or part of it to make sure you get paid. Most of them don't do that anymore. So you almost have to have a cash bucket somewhere.
Yeah. Well, yeah. If you're not a joint owner on an account with your spouse, or they have their own in their own name, at least have a separate joint account that you can have something in. Make sure that you have a TOD on that account, your spouse's account.
But you still got to have a power. You still have to have a death certificate to even access that. So I still think maybe two separate savings accounts with 10 or 15,000 in them. So that if one gets locked down because hey, my spouse passed away, I've got 15,000 in my account that I can take care of. But these particular people, all their accounts were joint. A lot of our clients are older. They're used to always having joint accounts. And so, again, it's things you don't think about, but we've experienced it. And here we are working with clients trying to free up some money somewhere to help out.
Yeah. We really spoke about a lot of practical things prior to moving around any assets or any real financial discussions. Because when a significant other passes, you don't want to have to worry so much about what is happening to your accounts in that immediate aftermath. As we discussed earlier, there will be plenty to deal with in the moment, funeral arrangements, etc. That's why, as it is with your overall retirement picture, it is so important to have a plan in place before you actually need it. You mentioned joint accounts and the need for immediate cash. Are there any other things to be aware of when you get to the point of moving accounts to beneficiaries and things like that?
Not so much on that, but another little helpful tip, okay? Don't put your will and powers of attorney in a safety deposit box at the bank, okay? Because if you pass away on a Friday, the bank, once they find out you passed away, and you may not even have to tell them, okay? They look out for obituaries. They will lock that safety deposit box down as well as the accounts. So if you have a will in there, how can you get the will out? Well, you have to go to probate court. You can't go to probate court without an original will. So it makes it very difficult. And you may have to go through and get a court order, and it may take weeks. Same thing with a power of attorney. Think about a healthcare power of attorney. Most accidents happen on the weekend. So if you need to be able to make decisions for somebody that's been in a car accident and the healthcare directive is in the bank safety deposit box that doesn't open until Monday, again, we're wasting precious time. So these are documents you need to keep at home. You need to have some kind of a lock box, a fireproof box or something at home to keep these in. Make sure a couple of people have access that you trust, especially the executor and the agent on your powers of attorney. Just things that, again, that people come in all the time and they'll say, oh, it's in my safety deposit box. I go, wait, time out. Let's talk about this and make sure that's done correctly.
Yeah, just from personal experience in our office, many of our employees can vouch for this, but when we have a client's spouse pass, it kind of feels like, okay, it's go time, because there's a time limit on how much available cash they have when these accounts lock down and everything else. And I can already tell you it takes long enough for these carriers, the insurance companies and everything else to process the death benefit to get the death benefits to the beneficiaries and to transfer accounts. That takes long enough as it is. That could take months at a time.
Yeah,
sometimes.
and again, if you don't get your death certificate for 2 or 3 weeks, or if it's even longer because of, again, an autopsy that was required of this particular client, so just again, we don't want to push the person into saying, come in the office tomorrow. We want them to deal with stuff. We'll start behind the scenes on our end. Then when we need something from the client, we'll say, we only need this today, and we'll get it. And then we'll help them through the checklist. We don't hand them the checklist and say, go get them, Tiger. We do help them work through the checklist and say, well, these are things you need to make sure you take care of now. These two don't apply or whatever. Yeah. Just give them some good guidance.
Yeah, and on top of the timing, even more reason to avoid probate if you can help it as well, because that's even
we're all
more
about
time
avoiding,
to slow you down.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Folks, thank you again for joining us today at Master Plan Retirement Consultants Retirement Roadmap. Remember, check out our website, masterplanretire.com, to schedule your complimentary consultation with Mark. Again, that's masterplanretire.com.
Be glad to run a bunch of reports for you. Let's see where you're at, and if we can get you where you want to be. And we're very good at that. So those reports will help illustrate that. And I would also bookmark that the website, because there's always new things being added, new resources, new YouTube and podcasts, things like that. So masterplanretire.com is a great place to go to schedule, but also as a resource. Other than that, it's been a great show. We appreciate you joining us, but remember always to plan well and prosper. Take care, everybody.
This was Retirement Roadmap Radio with Mark Fricks of Master Plan Retirement Consultants. To schedule a complimentary consultation, go to masterplanretire.com or call 770-980-9262. Thanks for listening, and remember, plan well and prosper.
All matters discussed during this show are for informational purposes only. Each individual situation may vary, and the opinions expressed here may not apply to everyone. Materials presented are believed to be from reliable sources, and no representations can be made as to its accuracy. All ideas and information should be discussed in detail with one of our qualified representatives prior to implementation. Advisory services offered through Master Plan Retirement Consultants, a registered investment advisor in the state of Georgia. Mark Fricks and Master Plan Retirement Consultants are not affiliated with or endorsed by the Social Security Administration or any other government agency.